a pretty dry topic. Everybody wants money, but as soon as you start using words like budget, that's a that's a bad word. That scares people away. Um, and balanced checkbook. Oh no, no, no! I don't want to do that. So I think it is good that you're here, though. Money is I actually, if you're a student in one of my senior level classes, what I am about to present is straight from one of my lectures. And Madison, help me. Was it your idea that we do this?
Yeah. Mhm.
So had you heard me talk about it before?
Yeah, I remember you talked about it in storyboarding last year.
And that's the funny thing. So Madison said, hey, it might be nice for more of the club members to kind of get this perspective. I didn't used to talk about money. This isn't like an animation topic, is it? This is a life skills topic. And I found myself counseling and advising students about money. They weren't sure what to do. They weren't sure how to negotiate when they were getting maybe their first job opportunities. And I once had a young man come talk to me. He was getting married and he wanted advice on what to do about their separate, checkbooks and bank accounts and stuff like that. And I just found myself, dishing out financial advice based on just my own life experience and what I've done with my family and everything. And I would do that just one on one. And I was talking about it one day with a student who asked me some questions in the back of 185, and more students started gathering around, and someone said, maybe could you talk about this in class? And that's kind of how it ended up in my class, in my curriculum. I'm like, would you guys really want to hear this? And they're like, yeah, please. Uh, and it's unfortunate in a sense because you're calling this business stuff, Keely. I guess so, but it's not even business. This is personal finance, if anything. And let me say up front, like it says on the slide there, I'm not a finance professional and I'm not some sort of advisor. There are people who do earn that kind of credential, and it's not a bad idea when you are making money to maybe consult with a financial advisor um, to get some insight into how to best handle the funds that you have. I'm not that person. I'm just some old guy who teaches animation and has had to deal with how, I've managed the money that our family has made. And yeah, Palin, you mentioned parents, and yeah, it's one of those things that I guess we assume parents will share with their kids, but there are two problems there. First of all, I have children, and I know they don't listen to me. So you're probably ignoring your parents. And then second of all, sometimes the parents aren't necessarily, I don't know, putting it all together. When I was a young person, they actually taught some of this stuff in school, like elementary school. Like they taught us how to handle a checkbook. And, and we had what they called home ec. I don't know if you guys have home economics in schools anymore, but they split it between like three categories: cooking, sewing, and then there was this kind of family genealogy slash taking care of yourself thing. And I think it was kind of spun in there, but I got to confess, none of the stuff that I mean, I might have picked up bits and pieces here and there. And my own family, as a young person growing up, we never had any money. We were kind of on the poor side of things. I mean, our family, I had pretty humble beginnings. How about we'll put it that way. and computer program. Oh, nice, Ami. So yeah, we didn't like have computers back then. We had adding machines. And I'm pretty quick. Wendy watches me on the number pad. She's like, "How do you do that?" Because I learned how to use an adding machine when I was in school, and you can be pretty quick if you know how to use that number pad. Anyway, yeah, we didn't have much money. There was one fundamental idea, though, that my mother instilled in me. That's a part of what I'm hoping to instill in some of you, and that is don't borrow. And that seems pretty simple. Don't borrow money, but it's when you start getting more specific about what that means that people start saying, wait a minute, that doesn't count. Yeah, it all counts. So, but the idea of just never borrowing money. Never is a big word, and I am going to throw one exception out there. We'll get to it. But that was maybe the fundamental thing. And again, I came from pretty humble beginnings, humble enough that, I mean, we're the family that the church would give cans of food to at Thanksgiving, and welfare and food stamps were how, we got by and stuff when I was a little kid. So we were definitely at the lower rung. So I've managed to, move through some different levels of financial success. We're not wealthy, but we're fine. Keely, stay afraid. You should be afraid. There's every good reason to be terrified of credit cards. So yeah, we're going to talk about personal finance. Now, for us as artists, it does spill a little bit into business, but I'm not going to talk much about that, like contracts and S corps and LLCs and all that sort of stuff. I'm going to stay a bit more focused on the personal finance side. Well, Emily, why do you need to build credit? See, that's one of the deceits. It's one of the tricks. Why do you need to build credit? You only need credit if you want to borrow money. No, don't buy into their lies. So, all right, we're going to move through. So let's see what this says. There does need to be some certain assumptions. Well, again, Emily, we're going to get to this, all right? And you're making assumptions that you're going to borrow money. And there is one exception. We'll get to it. But I am going to begin with a certain assumption here. I'm going to assume you have a job. I'm going to assume you have some income. But you can actually start practicing these things even before you have like an income, even when you're dependent upon someone else for, say, your house and food, which is okay. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think you should, well, I was about to say take advantage. I mean, take advantage in a good way. If you've got family who are willing and able to support you, even while you get started, do it. Save your money. Really build up a cushion. That's one of the fundamental ideas that I'm going to try to instill in you, and that is to have a fund, an emergency fund that will operate as a financial cushion. It's one of the ways to free your mind of worry and care. I feel like I'm singing a Disney song, but that's kind of where we want to get to. So when I talk about budgeting, I do use numbers that I pulled straight from the union wage scale, with the presumption that all of my students are going to find employment at union houses. I'd love for that to happen. It won't, but that's the ideal. And I do begin with an entry-level position. And I think my budget's out of date. I think that you will actually make more money than my budget shows when we get to the budget. And I do believe you can start thinking this way. And I'll give you an example. I've got a daughter. She's probably older than most of you. She's married. She's 31. And when she was a teenager in our home, I put her on a budget. We gave her money, an allowance, you might call it. But we asked her to take that money and to budget it. And we gave her like a little breakdown of places where she would put the money. So some of the money was for spending, some of the money was for saving, So some of the money was for rent. Even though we gave it to her, she's kind of giving it back. This was all part of her just beginning to understand what it would be like when she was on her own. And my son, who is a teenager right now, so we should probably get him on something like that. But since he was small, he's had an allowance. But in addition to the allowance, he also has a long-term savings fund and a midterm savings fund. So we give him the allowance, but he was required to split that money into chunks. A chunk that he could, if he chose, spend that day. A chunk he had to save for long-term goals, and then midterm goals. He had to put some money into that particular fund. So it's a way of thinking about money that I think you can start even before you are maybe working full time. But even before we get into the money, and we've already stumbled into this issue, we already have, we need to talk about debt, that I call him the debt bull. And why is he not animated? Oh, there we go. Oh. Yes, this is the evil creature that is just waiting and lurking and hoping you will buy into things like, I need a credit history. I don't think you necessarily need to do what they tell you you need to do. You got to realize that you are being sold an idea. You're being sold a point of view that's being sold to you by the people who will benefit from it. And you're not that person who's going to benefit from it. But the people who are selling the idea will. How often have you seen like a news reporter sit up there on the TV or on your YouTube or whatever, however you consume your media, say things like consumer spending is up, this is good, lending has been loosened, more people are borrowing and spending money, our economy's looking good. It's a sucker's bet. They want you to spend, and when you spend, you get rewarded for it. They tell you, you're doing a good job, keep spending money, it's good for the economy, keep buying things, you keep buying things, and we'll even lend you money. We'll make it easier for you to borrow money so you can buy more stuff to keep this machine rolling. And the machine does need that to function. And you need to decide, are you going to be a part of the machine, or are you going to step outside of this machine and say, no, I'm not going to be a part of that machine. Now, again, I'm old enough to have gone through some interesting financial times. There was a terrible financial crisis that impacted all of us in 2008. And it wasn't something that was like hard to see coming. It was really evident that there was going to be a problem. There was an absurd balloon when it came to the house prices in particular. And people were using that absurd inflation of the values of homes to tap into what's called equity. And so they were leveraging. Leverage is a bad word. Leverage means you borrow money against something to buy something else. And in particular, when it comes to investment terms, it means you're borrowing money to invest. Oh, don't ever do that. But what they were doing is they were leveraging their homes, not even to invest, but to buy toys or to go on vacation. They were taking this asset and they were borrowing money against its value and then just spending it. And then that asset suddenly decreased in value. And people's entire livelihoods and fortunes disappeared. And it had this terrible impact on our economy and on the banks that had loaned the money that people couldn't afford to give back. And it was just this terrible, terrible worldwide kind of catastrophe. And a lot of people got hurt. And maybe some of you listening had families that were impacted negatively by what occurred then. My job was affected. For a year, I had to take a 10% cut in pay. Every Cal State employee did, because the money used to pay for the education that you receive, part of it comes from the fees that you pay, but another big chunk comes from the state of California. And the tax income dropped dramatically because they're taxing people's possessions. And if they don't have those possessions, like their homes, well, they can't tax something they don't have. And they're taxing things like their income. California is very dependent upon income taxes, especially for the wealthier percentages. And it's somewhat problematic because as the fortunes of the wealthy go up and down, so do the fortunes of California. It's one of the challenges that we deal with in the state. And so we saw a decrease in tax income, and they cut funding to a lot of programs, including the California State University system. And one of the responses, for a year, we all had to accept what was called a furlough, where we all received a 10% reduction in pay. And that wasn't something, it wasn't a loan that we gave them. That was just, you're not getting it. So, that money never came back to us. It was just lost money. And that was a result of that financial collapse, which was related to lax lending standards and people's perception of their homes as an ever-increasing asset. That's never going to be the case. Things are always going to go up and go down again. So there were a number of factors. And right now, we're seeing home prices, I think they've even gone even higher than they did back then. Now, there are some other factors that are different, but this stuff just isn't necessarily sustainable. And we'll see. And I'm not, again, I'm not an economic whiz or anything. I'm just looking at these ripples and these changes and the ups and downs, the economy, and how it can impact my family and how it can impact you. So you, going back to 2008, like I said, I received a 10% cut in pay. How did that affect my family? How did that affect my day-to-day life? I can tell you that I didn't like it, but there was no noticeable effect on my family and my life because we live well within our means. And if an emergency were to come up, we have a significant cushion in place, a financial cushion, to address that emergency. And something else we did not choose to do was to participate in the events that led to this crisis. So we owned a home that we bought in 1999. We did not refinance and cash money out. We did not do a lot of the things a lot of other people had done that resulted in them being in a place where their home was worth less money than they owed against it. So we always had equity in our investment in our home. We didn't borrow money, so we didn't have any credit challenging us. When I did see a 10% reduction in my pay, we were fine. Again, it wasn't it was disappointing, but again, we were fine. So that was kind of where we were at. And what I want you to understand is that when things are good, when things are bad, if you've got a plan that's consistent and steady and allows for you to have that pad, you will stay on a constant path as these ups and downs occur outside of your financial bubble. If you maintain a certain amount of consistency and you make reasonable goals and you meet them and you ensure that you have those pads, you, I believe, can sail through these storms without really being impacted. So debt is bad, don't borrow money. I know it's simplistic. That's good, it's easy to understand. And you're gonna come at me with all kinds of buts. Everyone else does it. The news tells me I should do it. I have to build my credit report, don't I? Don't I need to have a credit score? And I need a car. I need new clothes. I'm trying to get a job. I need. And after all, I can afford the payments. You are fooling yourself, and you're letting that machine use you. If you move in this direction, and it doesn't take much to get in, and once you have a little bit in, you start getting pulled in, and then it's almost impossible to get out without making drastic and dramatic change to how you look at and live your life. So I just really want to encourage you to avoid borrowing money. It is a trap. It truly is. It's a trap. And I know it's funny, we got a funny meme, but it's a trap that can really hurt you. One of my former students, who is now a storyboard artist, worked for a lending company, and she saw some of the worst of it. And she said it sure opened her eyes to borrowing, and she never borrows money. And very much in line with the kind of thinking that I share with you all. And part of it was because she saw what happens to people when it goes bad. And you might say, it'll never happen to me. Well, of course, you don't plan for that, but it can happen to you. Now, I'm sitting there saying I don't borrow money, right? Someone's arguing a lot in the chat. You can argue all your like, all you're doing is rationalizing. I would encourage you to stop arguing, stop for a minute, blank your mind, and just listen. And please, as simple as it is, don't borrow money. Don't become a slave to this machine. Just don't do it. It really is a lifestyle that you don't have to be a part of. You have a choice. And it is easy to borrow. They make it easy. They make it really easy for you to borrow money. They want you to borrow money. Have you ever heard the term wage slave? You ever heard of people who work for the paycheck because they need that paycheck to pay all their bills that are coming? You don't want to be that wage slave. To some extent, you're going to need to work to make money to pay for the things that you need to live: food, utilities, a place to live, etc. It's not quite the same thing as when it's going to debt. Debt, there is just never an end to it. I don't know what the average credit card interest rate is these days, but I know that at one point when I was younger, it was around 20%. Credit card debt, unsecured debt, that is, say, a 20% rate. That means that in 4 or 5 years, you will pay again for what you paid for. And you're never going to pay that off. Now, I know that they passed some laws to restrict the debt, to try to pull it down a bit, so that the credit card companies couldn't keep people as burdened by it. But still, it's just a bad play. It's a foolish use of your money. You are much better off, and we're going to get in a little more detail about this, but much better off saving the money, earning interest on it, and waiting to buy whatever it is that you feel you have to have. Set goals and save your money, and you'll earn interest on the money. Credit score. Someone talked about credit score, and I talked about how I don't borrow money. I just looked at my credit score just now. There it is. And that's actually a little lower than it was last time I spoke. Last time I spoke, it was 850. Did you know you could have a credit score of 850? Some people say you can't have one. I know that I've had one. I've seen it. It's entirely possible. I don't borrow money, but I've got a credit score. How does that work? I don't care. I know I have one, and I know it's exceptional. So stop buying into this idea that you have to borrow money to have a credit score, and understand that people use the credit score to loan you money. If you're not borrowing money, it becomes somewhat irrelevant. You might say, well, to get my apartment, I had to give my credit score. Well, again, there's something out there. They calculate it somehow, and it's not just from having borrowed money. So don't borrow. It's not worth it. Is it ever okay to borrow money? I sound so extreme. I want to sound extreme because this is a fairly extreme message in contemporary American society. It isn't actually an extreme message if you look at history, even in America. Now we have a very consumer-based society where we buy, right? And I actually don't mind buying things that are nice and you like. That's fine, but only buy it if you've got the frickin' money. Borrowing money, and when I was a young person, it was actually a lot harder to get a credit card. And I'm an old man compared to you guys, but I'm not that old. But it was actually a lot harder to get a credit card. They actually were concerned about giving like a teenager a credit card. They're worried they might not be able to pay it back. They actually worried about such things at one time. But it seems to have changed, and they really do want to get you accustomed to borrowing money that you spend and then paying it back in installments. And that's why I'm so extreme. And is it ever okay to borrow money? The one exception I'll give you is that home purchase. Does anybody know the average price of a home in Orange County right now? It's stupid high. I think it's probably more like 700 than 500, Emily. I'm going to take a quick check and see. I bet you those numbers are posted somewhere not too far away. Housing market. It's going to give me numbers. Oh my gosh. You're not going to believe this. The median sales price in Orange County right now, according to Redfin, $850,000. That's a lot higher than I thought. That's a stupid amount of money. That's insane. And if I tell you, oh, save your money, you'll buy a house someday. And if you turned around and said, Chuck's a freaking lunatic, he's an idiot, I'm not listening to him, I could not argue with you. You're right, that's a stupid thing to say. You're not going to save up $850,000 and buy that house. Now, if you were going to have to spend $850,000 on your cemetery plot, yeah, maybe you could start saving now, and maybe you'd be there when you die. But we really don't want to look at the house that way now, do we? So, how do you buy a house? Well, you will have to borrow money to buy that house. Why is it okay? Just because you'll never save the money up? Why should I even buy a house? Well, that's a really good question. Should you buy a house? I don't know. That's a very conditional situation. No matter what, you will be paying money every month to live somewhere. You're going to either rent or you're going to pay a mortgage. What's the advantage of the mortgage? Well, you are in essence investing in an asset. Whereas when you're renting, the money just goes to the landlord and it's just gone. Mortgages can end, rents are endless. That is correct. Again, you're paying against that loan. Now, there are some other advantages to investing in the purchase of a home. a home can earn equity over time. But on the flip side, like it says here, a home can also lose value. Does anybody here know what equity is? You guys understand that concept? I like that, Emily. Okay, equity. Now, when you do purchase a home, ideally, you don't borrow all the money. You save up a certain amount of money that you make a down payment against the home with. And Sabi, you're touching on it. So when, let's say you want to go and you want to buy an $850,000 house, the ideal would be to have at least 20%. That would be $170,000 saved up to pay against the price of the home. And so you would borrow, if we're keeping it really simple, not quite this simple, but it's good enough for this illustration. You'd borrow $680,000 and you would pay $170,000 of your own. $170,000 is still an awful lot of money, isn't it? So because, especially in a market like Southern California, San Francisco, or New York, where home prices are just extraordinary, it is tough to get that 20% down to get into a home. So people do buy homes without saving up that ideal 20%. And there are certain conditions you'll have to meet. You might pay a slightly higher interest rate. You might have to pay for something called PMI. It's a mortgage insurance in case you default, etc., things like that. But so there are some other factors that do end up costing you a little bit more money if you don't save up that nugget. But again, it's not unusual in a market such as this that you don't save the 20%. But if you can, do it. And if you don't, make that a priority to get that 20%. Now we're getting ahead of ourselves talking about buying houses, but I want to get this equity idea across to you. As soon as you borrowed that $680,000, now you're gonna have to start paying your monthly mortgage. But and that will go against both interest and the principal. Most of it's going to be going against interest initially. But that $850,000, let's forget about interest for just a second. And the $170,000, now you paid that against the home. Did you lose the money? You don't have it to spend, but you didn't lose the money. Because if your home is worth $850,000, and you owe $680,000, that $170,000 is still yours. You just moved it. You moved it from your savings account into the home. Why is that a good idea? Well, again, when I was your age, you actually earned a semblance of interest on a savings account, like 5%. These days, what is it? 0.8%. It's ridiculous. You might as well. You can't even keep up with inflation with a savings account. So that money you had in the savings account, if you have it in literally a savings or a money market, you're hardly earning any kind of interest on it. You put it into the home. It is more likely than not that that home's value will increase over time. I'm looking at this. I'm actually going to share my screen. I'm looking at this image right now where I got the information about the median sales price. Look what it says below. A 13.3% year-over-year increase. What does that mean? It means that last year at this time, prices were 13.3% less. So if you bought a home for $850,000 a year ago, now the median sales price, well, that's 2 years ago. Now we're going back to March. That's 3 years ago. Let's go back to April 20. Oh, it's $740,000. So let's say you bought a $740,000 house last year. If it follows this trend, and you put 20% down. What's 20%? That's like 115,000. So you didn't have to put down as much, did you? Now let's see. I'm gonna make sure I did that right. 7.0123 times 0.2. Yeah, 148,000. $148,000 you put down on that house, and it was $740,000, and now it's worth $850,000. That $148,000 you took out of your savings account and put into the house, it's not $148,000 anymore. It's now $258,000. Do you see the benefit to you? That's what equity represents. Equity is the difference between what you owe from the value of the home. Now, what if I want to spend some of that money? That's the rub, isn't it? That's not what's called liquid. When you have a money in an investment like a home, you can't just grab a hold of it. Now, there are ways to work out lending situations that allow you to borrow against your equity. What did I say about borrowing? Don't do it, okay? This is a long-term investment you've made in that home. And someone mentioned in the chat that someday you'll pay the mortgage off. So every month when you pay money to your bank, you're actually kind of paying money to yourself. Because every time you make a payment against your home, you are increasing your equity in that home. Now, some of that money goes to the interest because you do have to pay interest. Interest is buying the right to borrow that money in advance. Yeah, it's usually a 15 or 30-year mortgage. That's correct, Emily. And I would say, especially in a market like this one, most mortgages are 30 years. So that's equity. And it is powerful in regards to building wealth. And that is why a home is oftentimes a good investment. But just like it says on this slide we're heading back to, homes can lose value. They're not guaranteed. Nothing is. In the long run, you will see this happening. If you go back in most markets, a place like Detroit, Allentown, maybe not. But Southern California, you're in a good place. You buy a home. The home can lose value. And if you are treating your home as though it was liquid, that's when you get yourself into trouble. And that's what happened to a lot of people in 2008. They weren't looking at the money they invested in their home as being an investment in a place to live first, and as a long-term financial investment second. They were looking at it as an ATM machine. And they started taking money out of the equity. And then the value of their home plummeted. And their equity disappeared. And then that loan that they had taken out against the home was greater than the value of the home. I was shopping for a new home in 2012, and that was, or 2013. And that was fairly soon after the economy was just beginning to recover. And one of the problems I had in trying to purchase a home in Orange County, there were very few homes on the market. And one of the reasons there weren't many homes on the market was because there were people who wanted to sell, but they owed more money than their homes were worth. And they could not afford to sell. So they were waiting until the value of their homes had crept up past the point of what they owed. So that's equity. Does that help explain that idea? Good. So there are some other advantages to buying a home. Taxes. You will pay taxes. We all pay taxes. You're paying them now even if you don't know. And when you start making more money, you pay more taxes for a number of reasons. But and when you own a home, they give you certain tax breaks. And someone asked about renting costing more than home ownership. It can, and this is one of the reasons. If you take a rent that you're paying and a mortgage that you're paying, and the amounts are the same, in the bigger scheme, the mortgage is probably costing that person less money than the rent is costing the renter, because the interest that you pay is a deductible item if you itemize your deductions and your taxes. So building and buying a home, there really isn't any difference. So doesn't matter. If you want to buy a home, you got to buy land. You're not paying to build a house when you buy a built home. You're paying for the land it's built on. If you want to build a home in Orange County, you're going to pay an arm and a leg for that lot of land. So yeah, it's not like there's like cheap land. No, not in Orange County. You're gonna pay for that land, and then you'll have to pay someone to build the home. I don't really see that being a less expensive way to get a home. You can maybe get a custom home built the way you want it, but unless you're the contractor, you're not gonna really save money. But the tax deduction, that's coming from the interest that you pay, and you can't deduct your rent from your taxes, but you can deduct the interest you pay. Now, I keep saying probably. There's a lot of probablys. Well, Emily, we're sure not in Indiana. I can only imagine what the real estate market is like in Indiana. I'm betting there's a lot of really inexpensive land. So that's a different story, but I'm a bit more focused on where we are. And buying a new home in Indiana is going to cost you a lot less, or just any home in Indiana is going to cost you probably a lot less than it will here in Orange County. So, but back to where houses can cost money where renting doesn't. One day I came home. This is in our older home. We were at when I lived in Eagle Rock, and I went downstairs and something smelled bad. And I went into the downstairs bathroom and the tub was filled with sewage. Not a good thing. You see, I had to take care of things when they broke, and something broke, and it was an expensive repair. If I was renting that home, it would not have been my responsibility to pay for that repair. When you rent, the money just goes away, but there are other issues that you don't have to worry about. Like if you're renting in a condo or an apartment or something, and you're the renter, you don't have to worry about paying for the roof when it needs to be repaired. When there is a plumbing problem, it's the person who owns the facility who is responsible for maintaining and taking care of those aspects of that facility, whether it's a house or an apartment or whatever it may be. Now, when you buy a home, now it's your job to fund all of that. So that's part of the expense of being a homeowner. That's part of what you need to consider when you're looking at the financial aspects of home ownership. So is having a mortgage less than renting? It's not so simple of an equation. I will say, now Wendy and I bought our first home in 1999. And it seemed like a lot of money at the time. We bought a house that was over 2,000 square feet. It was actually over 2,100 square feet in Eagle Rock, north of Colorado Boulevard, the nicest neighborhood in Eagle Rock. And we paid $285,000. And boy, it seemed like a lot of money at the time. Today, if you wanted to buy a home like we bought in Eagle Rock, you'd have to put a 1 in front of that number at least. That $285,000 home is going to cost you well over $1 million, maybe over $1.3 million. That's equity. And it didn't seem like a still water. It seemed like a lot of money. And it was equity in that home that allowed us to buy the home we live in now in Orange County. And because we kept the equity, and even now when we sold that home, we rolled all of the equity into the new home. And our current mortgage is less money than what one of our friends was paying, a lot less money, to rent an apartment in Brea. We're renting a 2-bedroom apartment in Brea, and they were spending about $700 a month more than we pay in our mortgage. It's insane, okay, and I get that. But this is why you need to plan ahead. And if you can get a head start on saving and in controlling your debt, you're going to be able to do something like Wendy and I have done. When we bought the home, it was a lot of money. When you buy a home, it's going to seem like a lot of money. But in 15 years, all of a sudden it's going to seem cheap. It's how this kind of always keeps rolling and moving forward and working. So, all right, let's move back to this thing. I'm spending too much time on this, but hopefully this is making a little bit of sense to you. Can I borrow money to buy a car? I mean, come on, you said I could buy a house. How about a car? I'd really rather you didn't. I would encourage you to try to keep whatever you have as transportation working for now. Keep it running. A lot of people say, oh, I shouldn't put money into this thing. It's beat up and it costs too much to keep it running. Every study says it's wiser to keep the old heap moving than it is to buy something new. Keep it running and save your money. Don't make a car payment to the bank. Make the car payment into a fund that you maintain where you're saving money to buy that next car. And keep that car running. My old heap, I've been driving the same car since 1998. 1998. It's got 186,000 miles, almost 187,000. I love my little car. You got to change the way you look at things. Palin, it's a trooper. I hope you like it. And you know, it's funny, when I bought my car, it was a used car. You know what it is now? It's a classic. Now, I picked kind of a nice car when I bought it. These days, my car is actually worth more money than I paid for it. Isn't that goofy? I never thought I'd see that day come, but it's here. I've had people stop me. I was pulling into the supermarket once and this big truck, big pickup pulls in front and stops me. And he says, I'd like to buy your car. I'm like, it's not for sale. So, but yeah. Don't buy a car. Don't borrow if you can help it. I do understand sometimes people are in a situation where they simply don't have transportation and the only way for them to get something is to maybe borrow some money and buy a car. All right, fine. You better really mean it. You're not just making excuses, because I think you are. But try to not borrow all the money for the car. Put down and have some equity in the car. It's not the same as at the house. Your car is probably not going to grow in value. Cars are notorious for depreciating in value. That's the norm. Don't expect it to be like my car. When you see my car, you'll know why it's worth more now. But the car you buy probably isn't going to do that. However, you need it for the purpose it serves and recognize it as such. However, you really don't want to borrow money against a depreciating asset. And leasing isn't even worth talking about. Leasing is always a bad idea. Unless you can work out one of those schemes where you deduct the leasing cost against a business. Be careful, you could get busted for tax evasion too. So try not to borrow. Oh gosh, this is being recorded. What about credit cards? Well, look who's back again. Credit cards are just bad, but we're going to move up here. I hope my daughter doesn't watch this. Make good choices. Make good choices. I hope so, Madison. You know, I do believe that car will be in a museum someday. I just worry about when the battery fails on you. I have no idea what that might cost to replace, but that might be mean you buy another car. But the daughter, when she was 14 years old, um, I had a little Miata. I loved my little Miata. It was a white 2001 Mazda Miata. Well, my son Tucker came along and it wasn't planned for. That was a bit of a surprise. Well, that little two-seat Miata had to go. We had to get something a little bit bigger. And my daughter was 14, and I thought, you know, maybe we can keep this little car that I like so much, and it can be the first car she has. I said, so Annie, would you like this car? And she says to me, no, I don't like it. I'm like, okay, well, if you were a teenager and someone offered you a car, never say no. That was the first car I offered to her. I offered her another car. I offered to buy her a BMW M3. You might wonder, why would you buy a BMW M3? Well, I wasn't going to buy her a new one. I was going to buy her a used, an old one, the very first model of the BMW M3 that was built between 1987 and 1989. Or actually, no, I'm sorry, they went up to 91. It's called the E30 M3. And that's a nice car, but it was old. But it was a nice car. And she said, I don't want one of those either. If you buy me a BMW, get me a newer one. I said, I don't want to buy a new one. If I buy you that new one, it's going to cost the same amount of money. At the time I was looking to buy her a car like this, I was going to spend between $12,000 and $15,000 on the car. And I said to her, I can buy a BMW E30 M3 for between $12,000 and $15,000. And it will be yours to drive. Now, it's still my car. You'll have to put gas in it and get the oil changed, but it's going to be your car just to use, and you can save your money, and you can use it as long as it takes until you can get your own car that you purchase. And then you'll just, it'll be mine again. Now, she was like, but why? Why would I do that? Well, let me show you something. I knew what the future would bring. I knew this car was going to increase in value. Do you guys see what a BMW E30 M3 goes for today? $89,388, $69,500. This one was turned into a race car with the engine removed, and still it went for 30 grand. 54,000, 66,500, $63,666. Look, the engine out of one of them that someone supercharged sold for 18,500. I could have bought her one of these, and I had my eye on a red one, like this, for 15 grand. Because I knew this car, which was built in limited numbers and was an homologation special, it was kind of a one-off unique thing that BMW had done at this time, I knew it would increase in value with time. And she said, no. So that was my second try. So then I said, okay, tell you what, here's $1,000, go buy yourself a car. And she bought a Kia. And she is not, I mean, she's embarrassed, but she's not afraid to tell her brother, if your dad offers you a car, take the car. I was an idiot. And her husband is like, what were you thinking? But there it is. So don't look the gift horse in the mouth. Take what you're offered. Okay, and now let's get into the credit cards then. So he's back. Credit cards really are the devil. They are. This is doom. And if you have one right now, I understand. They've been pushed at you so hard all your life. Gosh, you got to get away from it though. And that might take some work, but you can do it. Credit cards equal debt. Debt is bad. Don't borrow money. We're right back to where we were a couple slides ago. This is kind of fundamental. This rides underneath everything I'm saying to you. I'm probably losing people. They're probably like checking out. They're like, I don't want to hear this anymore. But no, really, I say this because I care about my students. I do. I care about all of you. And I want you to be successful. And I know that this is hard. Um, yeah, but before you can cancel it, Emily, you got to pay it off. That's the problem. If you're carrying a balance. So how do you buy stuff you don't have a credit card, especially online? Well, cash works, but again, how do you do that online? Well, Venmo and things, I guess, help a little bit there. Debit cards. Debit cards are a very viable alternative to the credit card because the debit card goes straight into your checkbook or your checking account. So you got to really watch it. It is effectively cash. Evan Cam wants to know if the slides will be available afterwards. Yeah, I think so. This is being recorded, right? So the whole thing will be available. So I'm going to say, yeah, it's that's a yes for you. And then I also have written up here charge card. Charge cards are not talked about much these days. I do think that there are some that exist. The American Express used to be a charge card. Do you guys know what a charge card is? Let's see. Here we go. 2021's best charge cards. A charge card, I'm going to put this in the chat. It's similar in appearance to a credit card, but it's not a credit card. Because with a credit card, the idea is that you have a spending limit that is basically an unsecured loan they're prepared to give to you. And they will give you a loan up to that amount of money. A charge card is just a card that you can use in place of cash that you aren't carrying in your pocket. So when you use the charge card, it goes into an account. And at the end of the month, they send you a bill. And that bill doesn't say, here's your minimum payment. The bill says, pay us for everything you spent during this month. Big difference from a credit card. Now, Samantha, you're raising the concern about a debit card. Yeah, I don't like debit cards for that reason. But the charge card is going to give you the protection that you want. It's going to give the protection of a credit card, but they will not loan you the money. So you do have to pay back the money that you spend when the bill comes. And in the old days, when I was young, American Express, which is a credit card today, it was more of a charge card. And the idea was that carrying this card was less likely that you would get robbed. If you have cash in your pocket and someone picks your pocket, cash is gone. But the charge card, you could cancel all that, kind of like with that credit card concern. And you wouldn't lose the money. And American Express, the old traveler's checks, the idea that it was a tool that people use when traveling, that's kind of how they marketed themselves and got started. And I used to have one. I had a charge card, American Express charge card. And it's interesting. Back then, you had to pay an annual fee to have a charge card because that's how they made their money. They weren't loaning you money. They weren't loaning you anything, so they weren't charging interest. Now, they do get money from the people, the vendors, but they also weren't, these credit card companies get money from their users because they're charging them interest. Well, I had a charge card, and it cost me $45 a year to have the privilege of having that card. You might wonder, why did I do that? Well, back then, American Express was offering this deal. If you got one of their cards for $45 a year, they would give you 2 free round trip tickets on United Airlines. And I would fly to and from college every year. That's how I got to and from home at the beginning and of every semester. You guys are really living a fantasy world where you carry gold bars around. And do you really think you could walk up to the cashier in the gas station and they could like change your gold bars. Anyway, they'd happily take it from you, but I don't think you'd get anything back. Walter, I mentioned that I think credit scores are just a trick to try to get you to get a credit card. And we'll summarize it there. So I really don't think credit scores are worth the time they give you to say it matters. But the charge card, I think, is a very viable option. Now, let me tell you the truth about our family. I have a credit card. Oh, let's get past the charge card slide. I actually, look at all this. I have a credit card, it says so right here. And there are people who counsel you not to use debt, to not even have a credit card. But, big but, capital letters B-U-T, I never carry a balance. I have never paid a penny of interest to the holder of my credit card. I treat my credit card like a charge card. As you all know, it's difficult to buy things online with cash. And you need to have some sort of a card. Now, I could use a debit card, but Samantha pointed out, there are some concerns with using debit cards because if they get access to that, they go right into your checking account. I know this. I also know I'm very disciplined and I will never carry a balance. I have never carried a balance. I mean, going back all the way to my youth, I've never carried a balance on a credit card. We have one credit card that we use for our family. And that's part of the thing as well. Don't have a bunch of them, just have the one. And I'm lying a little bit there too. We actually have two because the primary credit card we use is an American Express, and then there's places that won't take it. So we have to have a Visa just in case. But I almost never use the Visa. I only use the Visa if they won't take American Express. But like our optometrist, they don't take American Express, so I have to use the Visa there. Same thing though, never carry a balance. Pay the bill when it comes in full. You will never pay interest if you treat the card like a charge card, or just get a flipping charge card. Well, I found some, maybe I should. But I mean, there's some interesting, I'll have to look at some of these deals myself. 0, Tracy. The minimum balance is 0. You should never have a balance. If you have a balance, now it's a loan, and it's debt, and you're paying interest. So pay the balance. Just pay the entire bill at the end of the month. Don't spend money you don't have. Again, it's easy to say. It's harder to do. I do understand that, and that's why part of what we're going to talk about is budgeting. I got to move faster so I can get there. Oh, yeah. But where's the money come from? Well, you're going to have to start saving it. And this, again, is where the budget comes from. And you might say, yeah, but I already have debt. What do I do now? Well, budget, budget, budget. It's that bad word. When Wendy and I got married, I'm going to embarrass Wendy now. She's somewhere in this house. Sometimes she actually logs into these things and listens, and I don't find out until later. But here we go. So we got married. And I looked at Wendy's checkbook. She wasn't even using the lines on the checkbook. She was just writing across the paper. So first thing I had to do is sit down and go all the way back to the beginning. Thankfully, she had all her statements. And I went through the 3 years that she had this account, and I balanced the checkbook. And when we were done, we went into the bank because I'm like, I don't know, that was a lot. I was 1 penny off. The bank teller was very proud of me. But we did. We had closed and kind of reopened. That's one of the things you need to do sometimes when you don't have control of, say, your spending. And when I introduced the idea of a budget to Wendy, she was like, yeah, I don't think I'm gonna like this. Budget sounds like I don't get to do what I like to do. You know what she realized very quickly after we started budgeting? She really liked it. She found she could do what she wanted to do. Even better, She understood exactly how much money she had to do what she wanted to do with. So she wasn't like wondering, oh, should I be buying this or not? There was no wonder. I've got this amount of money, I can spend it. Budgeting is actually very freeing when you do it right. And if it's not freeing, then you're doing it wrong. If the budget doesn't seem like something you can do, then the budget's messed up and you need to make some changes to the budget. Budgeting really isn't that hard. It really isn't that controlling. It's not that stressful, not that limiting. Those are a lot of the myths that come with it. Budgeting is actually, I would say, it's a way of bringing peace to your mind. It's bringing peace to your thinking about money. You won't even have to think about money. If you don't do something like budget and take control of your money's going to take control of you. And you're going to be working to pay the bills. You don't want to put yourself in that position where you have to work to pay the debt. That sucks. And you might already be there. You don't need my forgiveness. Please don't feel like I'm judging you. I'm going to hopefully give you some strategies that you can employ to get out of it. But you're going to have to make the choice to say, you know what, he's right, I need to do this. And then set these goals and start working toward them. And it's not going to happen overnight. But it's feasible, and it does mean changing the way you look at your life, to look at how you consume things, to just look at what matters to you, and to reevaluate what really matters in your life. And gosh, money is such a deceit. It's such a trick. And I'm talking a lot about money right now. It might seem like it's really important to me. It's important to me that you understand its role in your life. And it does have a role in all our lives. It's how we manage transactions. And transactions are going to be fundamental to how you live. When you work for a studio and they pay you a wage, that is a transaction. They're saying you are valued and we're going to give you money. And you're going to use your valued work to create product for us that we can then sell to the public. Transaction, transaction, transaction. Money is how we measure those transactions. And you're going to need money to buy food. You're going to need money to pay for the roof over your head. You will need some sort of funds in order to make your way. So it does have an importance in that respect. But I don't want it to become something that is your ultimate goal. I'd rather see you place money in its proper spot in the scope of your life and have it serve you. The money should work for you. You shouldn't work for the money. That's the goal. And you certainly shouldn't worry about it. I mentioned the sewage in the bathroom. That was a bad day. Called the plumber up. He sent those cameras down. He said, you know what the problem is? This very pretty house of yours is very old. The pipes that your sewage run through were made of clay. See those trees in your backyard? Their roots broke apart the clay. The pipes are collapsing. It's an old house. This happens. You've got two choices, he said. We can dig through all this concrete about 30 feet down and dig out and replace that pipe. It's probably going to cost between $20,000 and $30,000. Or we can do this newfangled thing where we send down this kind of balloon and inflate it, and we run fiberglass down and effectively reline your old pipeline with fiberglass. It's got a lifetime guarantee, and that's only going to cost you $7,500. Next to 30 grand, that seems like a bargain, but still $7,500. One day I had that money. The next day I didn't. But you know what? It was just numbers. Because I had the money. I had more than that. How much more than that? I'm not going to tell you, but I have an emergency fund set aside. That is equivalent to, well, probably about a year of our living expenses as I've calculated them. The bills that we pay every month times 12, boom, that's the emergency fund. What's an emergency fund for? Emergencies. Getting the oil changed in your car is not an emergency. That's a different fund. We'll get to that. Needing new tires, paying the phone bill, not emergencies. Emergencies are those things that you never think are going to happen, and then they happen. There are two emergencies we have experienced in our time being married, Wendy and I. We were married in 1993. 2 times we've had to dip into the emergency fund. The time the refrigerator door fell off, and the time the sewage was in the bathtub. Those are not things you anticipate. So I'll tell you, the refrigerator costs more than the sewer pipe. I guess the hinge got old, Emily. I don't know. Just one day, Wendy was hollering, Chuck, Chuck. I come running across the house and she's holding the refrigerator door. I had to get the duct tape and tape it up. Anyway, that's another story. But I paid the plumber the $7.5 grand. Plumbing was fixed. What did I do with my emergency fund? Well, I just started putting money into it again to make up for that $7.5 grand. It took time. It didn't matter. It was just numbers on a spreadsheet. I slept fine at night, had nothing to worry about. There was no real stress of any kind. It was just numbers on a spreadsheet. That's what a budget does for you. It alleviates all that anxiety and stress. Is it really that easy? Well, it takes a little bit of work. Once a month, I sit down and I just go through and tally everything up. And I balance everything out and figure out the next month's budget. So I usually do that on a Saturday morning or a Saturday afternoon once a month. That's it. Like I said, you want your money to work for you. How does that work? We'll get to that in a moment. So let's get started. Priorities. How do you figure out your budget? Well, what matters? What do you have to do? What is vital? What must you spend money on? I've already touched base on some of them, right? By the way, I'm going to give you some priorities. You might say, oh, that doesn't matter to me. I'll bet you don't for most of them, because we're all human and we have certain fundamental needs that have to be addressed and met, and money's how we address those needs. And here are some of them right here. Housing, taxes, utilities, food. I mean, come on. You got to pay for those things. So you budget for them. Figure out what those basic needs are, and that is one of your top priorities. I said one of. I've got some other ones that might surprise you. This though, this right here, this is one of your top priorities. You got to hit the basic needs. But number 2, if you have debt, you got to get rid of that before you can really start doing the other things that are more optional. You got to get rid of the debt. Make it sort of the number 2 priority. There's one more priority I'm going to jump in front temporarily, and then we'll come back to this one though. Yeah, student debt sucks, doesn't it? I remember the day I graduated from grad school. Everything was going so good. I had student debt, by the way. I did borrow money for school. The day of my graduation, I went and I was living in student housing. I went to my mailbox, opened it up, and there it was. My first loan bill. I was like, seriously? The actual day of commencement? You're giving this to me? That sucked. Yeah, they were fast. All right. So how do you kill those debts? Well, first you got to identify them. Yeah, they did not wait. Identify your debts and focus on paying them off. How do you do that? Well, you have to figure out how much you can afford to put against them. Make sure it's more than the minimum. Break them down. Some people like to figure out which is the lowest balance. So if you've got more than one of these debts, it may feel good to kill one. And to kill one means identifying the one that you owe the least against, because you'll pay that one off the soonest if you make that your priority. And what you do is you pay the minimum against all the other debts except the one that you're focusing on. So you target that one. I think it's wiser to focus on the one that has the highest interest rate. Now, again, for some folks, getting that payment zeroed out, that accomplishment matters. So figure out who you are. But for me, just from the logic standpoint, I'd want to stop paying the highest interest rate, because that's the one you're paying the most money for the privilege of having borrowed. So I'd make that one my priority. And again, you pay the minimum against the others, but you pay everything that you can afford to pay that month against the one that you've targeted until you get rid of that one. Then you move to the next one. Then you move to the next one. It will take time, but you will get your debt paid off. That is, after your basic needs, your first priority. Except, even before you knock out the debt, you need a cushion. Because what if something happens? What if the sewer comes up in your bathtub? Now, if it's $7.5 grand, this cushion's not going to pay for it. But I'm expecting you're not in the place where you own a home and you're likely to incur this kind of an emergency. I would say to get at least an emergency fund of $1,000 cash in the bank, not in a CD, not in stocks or some sort of retirement account, in a money market account that you can access any day of the week. Something that's liquid, meaning you've got access to it. $1,000, and then don't you touch it. It stays there. That is your emergency fund. Only if you have one of those emergencies, like I described. We've had 2 emergencies in the time of our marriage, Wendy and I. That's it, 2 times we've gone into that emergency fund. So it really just sits there. And it'll collect a little bit of interest, but it's really there because you don't know what tomorrow may bring. And that $1,000. So pay the minimum against your debt till you get that $1 grand sitting there. Then turn and you, like a laser, shoot at that debt, knocking down one at a time. The money I have in my money market account is much, much more than $1,000. And it is sitting in a money market account, which is similar to a savings account. It earns a little bit more interest. It really doesn't earn much interest, but it's there in case of an emergency. And it is that 1 year of our expenses, which are easy for me to calculate because they're all in the budget. And it sits there and we never touch it. And I look at it every month and I add the interest to it that it has earned. And it grows a little bit, but it's only there in case of emergency. And you don't touch it, you just have it. And yeah, you need that. You need to have an emergency fund of some kind before you kill the debt, but then get rid of the debt. Now, once you've got the debt done, once you've got to that point where your debt's done, have a little party, celebrate that. But take the money that you were putting against the debt and now build a real emergency fund. And I've already told you what that is. It's 6 to 12 months of the expenses that you incur every month. 6 months is the minimum. 12, I mean, you could do more than that, but I think 12 is reasonable. And then you're going to want to do other things with your money. But now build a real emergency fund. So again, this is step by step. Number 1, you got to pay your basic needs. That's just going to have to happen. Number 2, $1,000. Number 3, kill the debt. Number 4, build that emergency fund into a real emergency fund that'll give you 6 to 12 months of meeting your basic needs. Remember that emergency funds are just for emergencies. Cars and things like vehicles, those maintenance expenses, furniture, stuff like that, that's not emergency fund. That's stuff you need to save for and be prepared to pay. Those things happen. Don't be surprised when you have to get new tires for your car. Prepare for it. Have the money set aside. You should be budgeting for those sorts of things. It says, twice. That was because when I made this, I'd almost forgotten about the refrigerator door. That was a pain. Sewer line. Okay, I've already told this story, so let's zip through. Okay. I'm sitting here talking about budgeting and not spending, but what am I driving? Some of you have seen it, right? I have this little Porsche. That's not right. How's that work? Well, just because you have a budget doesn't mean you can't have nice things. You can. How do you buy them? You save your money. You don't borrow the money, you save your money. And I have this old Porsche. This is the car I mentioned earlier. It's worth more money now than when I bought it because it's an old Porsche. It's an old air-cooled 911. All of a sudden, everybody wants one and they don't make them anymore. And so the value has gone through the freaking roof. But it's an old car. It's got 186,000 miles, like I said. It looks good. Well, someone ran into it a week and a half ago, but it'll look good again soon. I take good care of it. Drives great. It's been reliable. It's a good car. I like my car. Keep it running. Show you a picture. All right, fine. Let me find a more recent photograph. So my old 911, it runs well, and I like my car. And I do know that someday, its engine is going to have to get rebuilt. Anybody have a guess as to what it might cost to have an engine rebuild on an old 911? No guesses? I'm looking for a picture right now, so you guys have to shout out a lot. Yeah, that's exactly right. Marie Morales knows how much it is. That's a technical term, a lot. Yeah, it'll cost me a lot of money when that day comes. And guess what? I've had that money sitting in the bank for years. It's in my emergency fund. It's ready to go. There is my old car. I took that picture not that long ago. After I'd washed her in our driveway. There she is, except that bumper's all smashed up and that thing got broken. There's a little dent there. Someone drove into me. Yeah, but that's my old car. Maybe some of you have even seen me driving around school or something. But again, that picture is taken this year, so I keep her in good shape. Again, she's got a lot of miles on her, but they built these cars well, so she runs well. She's a good car. That's the family car over there, the GTI. But that's my old 911, like my old car. And there's my doodle of my own car. But yeah, I'm gonna have to get that engine rebuilt. And I have the money to rebuild that engine sitting in the bank. So when that day comes, I'll just pay for it. It's not going to be stress. There's none. I already, in essence, paid for the engine rebuild. I didn't save the money up in a day. It took time, but I knew that day would come. It hasn't yet, but it will. And I anticipated it. Every one of you has the ability to say, something's going to cost me money someday. I'm going to start saving for it now. Instead of just pushing it aside or saying, well, that's what credit cards are for. No, that's not what credit cards are for. Credit cards are to make the rich folk richer. So no, the money's there. Earning interest even. That's how a budget works. So you can have nice things. And yes, we have a Porsche. I'm talking about budgets. They don't mean you can't have nice things. You set priorities. You figure out what your priorities are. Now we're going to get back to that list. Again, some of these things are general, but some are going to be your own. I bet you Didn't guess this was next on my list, did you? Yes, retirement. Retirement is very high on the list of priorities. You're like, for you maybe, Chuck, you's old. Well, I got news for you. If I just started thinking about retirement today, I was way, way too late. You should start saving for retirement now. You will so thank yourself later. If you're working in this industry, you go out there and get that job. I know some of you are looking at graduation and you're good, you ought to get work. You're going to make good money. You're going to be surprised at that paycheck. Now, Southern California is an expensive place to live. It'll go away fast if you're not careful. So try to make good choices about like living arrangements, etc. And if your family's prepared to put up with you a little longer, like I said, take advantage. Save your money. Set up a budget. Start living with that budget and include things like housing costs, even though you're not paying them. Just set money aside for that. It'll just go into your savings and you can put it into retirement extra. But you'll get disciplined. But definitely have a retirement section in that budget, and it should be at the top. And I would challenge you to set aside 10% of your gross income. Do you know what gross income is? It's not ugly income. It's not disgusting income. It's a term used to describe the number on the check before taxes are removed, before any kinds of deductions are removed, etc. Now you'll find that when you make money, a lot of the money goes, like someone says, to Uncle Sam, to the taxes. So you might have a number on your, I'm just going to use a round number, $2,000 might be the gross pay that you earn on that paycheck, but you only get like 1,200. Well, what about that other 800? Well, that's what's going into the taxes and if you've got any deductions set up, etc. So what I'm saying is when you figure out this 10% number, it's not 10% of 1,200. It's not $120. It's $200. So you get $2,000, but you only receive 1,200. And now I'm telling you, you're actually only going to take $1,000 to live on. Because $200, 10% of your gross, you're going to immediately put that into an investment account for retirement. Now, what kind of an investment account? We'll come back to that. And there are a couple of options you'll have available to you, and I'll touch base on them. But you might say, I'm still young. That's why you should start saving now. Compound interest is such a powerful thing, and it's hard to describe. So I've got an illustration for it. I think it might be later on, so we'll come back to it. Oh no, we're going to do it right now. Good. All right. The snowball represents the money you save. Okay, and this is kind of how compound interest works. And you guys are so familiar with snow. I still think you'll be able to understand this. But you've got two people rolling snowballs. One starts with a tiny snowball, but they start sooner. The other person waits until their snowball's a little larger, but they start rolling it. So let's give them both a little hand for actually beginning to save. So this is the fella who waited. He waited a little longer and has a larger snowball. And he's rolling it along. And that's pretty good. Gets pretty big. There's his retirement saving. But the gal who started earlier with the tinier snowball, she ends up with a much larger pile because she traveled much further than she did. He went this little distance, and that's all he could pack onto his snowball. She started here, and as she rolled, every time she rolled, she was more than doubling the size of that snowball. And because she rolled for longer, her ball got a lot bigger. This is why you need to start now. Even now, before you get that first job, even if it's not 10% of your gross, but it's just a little bit, 10 bucks. You get started now. It's going to make a tremendous difference when you're older. And you're going to be in the catbird seat. Maybe you'll retire when you're 40 or 50 instead of 65 or 70, like a lot of your colleagues might end up doing. And then you'll be able to simply define your life as you wish and not have to work for the money, because now the money really is working for you. This kind of thing doesn't happen in a day, in a month, in a year. It takes decades. But if you wait to start, you'll never get there. Some people work until they die, not because they love the work, but because they have to. You may love this work. Just because you get to that point doesn't mean you have to stop loving it. Maybe you don't have to work on The Simpsons. Maybe you can make your own show and you don't even have to sell it. You just make your own art. You go sit by the beach and paint the waves. And you don't care if anybody buys the painting, because you're doing it because you love it. Because you got the money in the bank. It does sound nice. And you can do it. But it's not going to happen unless you make decisions now. And you can make those choices now. And it's worth it. It's worth it. Start sooner with less. Don't wait until you're making good money. You'll never be making that good money. If you begin with that mentality, you'll spend everything that comes in. And when you get the raise, you know what? You're going to find a place to spend it. But if you begin with budgeting and building these priorities and placing it one of those top priorities, that's saving for the future, it's going to change your life, and it's going to change the way you look at the money. If you just take that money out of your paycheck and you never touch it, it was never yours. That's the way to look at it. And gosh, there are not any do-overs. You get to choose now. You don't get to go back and do it again. If you wait 10 years, well, you made your choice. Don't get to do it again. So, gosh, I don't know how. The debt thing is like maybe the most important thing. This is probably the second most important thing that I'm sharing with you tonight. Now break it down. What do you need? Savings. You got to pay for insurance. You need clothes. Someday you're going to have to buy a new computer. You're going to have to replace that car. There are things you're going to need. Make your list. What about things you want? PlayStation 5. VR headset. That lightsaber we were just looking at there, Madison. Things you want. Well, they go on the list too. And it's okay to want things. And then what you do is you take the resources you have and you start breaking it down. You see where priority, work with the priorities first, but work your way down and see how you can make it work. Put them in your budget. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to take a look at the budget that I made. And I want you to know right now, this is an ugly budget. Because I made this budget for my family. I didn't make it to look pretty, and I didn't make it for you, though I give it to you. Samantha, that's what I'm showing you. I'm showing you a budget spreadsheet that automatically does it for you, but it's also really ugly because I made it. It's just what it's what I've created. So let's look at this budget, and again, not fancy. And this is the Chuck and Wendy budget that we live with. I use something like this every month to organize our finances. That's just the way I work. And this is it. So let's just break it down. Let's scroll down here first. And why do I have the income at the bottom of this budget spreadsheet? Anybody know? If you do figure it out, I don't know why, because you'll have to tell me. I just put it there. I guess I'm an idiot. It probably should be at the top, but that's where I put the income. So this income, I actually think this is out of date. If you look at the union website, I wanted to use the scale minimum for a storyboard revisionist, because that's not an unusual first job for students out of Cal State Fullerton. But I think the scale minimum is actually going up quite a bit from here. Now, this is a month. So how much money is that? Well, let's see what happens when, actually, I'm going to do this way. When we take, oops. There you go. It's just under $74,000 a year. Does that sound pretty good? Anybody have an opinion on that?
I don't think so.
You don't think so? You don't think that's a good starting wage out of college?
Oh, starting, yeah, okay,
that's what I'm talking about. Well, guess what? I think it's maybe even $10,000 a year more than this now. That's the minimum wage for a storyboard revisionist. That's not bad, is it? And for a storyboard artist, let me see. I think storyboard artists now are making around this a week. Oh, I'm sorry.
$23.73.
Oh, hold on. Wendy's got it. $23.73 a week. So
60 cents.
Oh, whatever. Okay, that's the minimum amount of money that a storyboard artist can be paid after 1 year in the industry for TV production boards. Do you guys see that number? There we go. There. Some Cal State Fullerton students have walked out of school into jobs paying that kind of money. What do you think? Not bad, huh? So you're not going to be rich, but you're going to do okay, right? And with that kind of money, you got something to work with. Well, this budget I have set up over here is a little bit out of date. Now, I gave it to Madison. He's going to share it with all of you. You can change these numbers. So you could make this, 7,500. And you can see things update. You see that? So these formulas do work, okay? And this other income, what might other income be? Well, what if you do conventions and you sell an artwork and stuff? Maybe you're making some money from that. You put that there. Or maybe you picked up some freelance. Who knows? But there's other income, and it's not unusual for us to make income from some other venues, so that's why I've got this here. By the way, I'm looking on my right to see you guys because that's where I put your cameras. I'm going to put you over here so I don't have to look over there all the time. So that's what this is. Now, I'm going to just go back up to the top because really this is where it starts. So let's pretend we've got the total up here. In fact, you know what I'm going to do? This is E62. I'm going to just put the total up here for my own sake so I can see it. Okay, so that's our income right there. All right, now taxes. You're going to pay taxes. There's nothing you can do about that. Everything else in here, you've got some control over. Almost wish you didn't, but you do. So is this the amount of tax that would be removed from this income? I'm not entirely sure. This is an estimate I made. That's not my income, so I don't know. But I made an estimate based upon my research on tax brackets at the time. So again, it's an estimate, but I think a fairly accurate one. Emergency fund. I'm putting $500 a month into the emergency fund. Why am I doing that? Because I've only got $1,000 in my emergency fund. I need to build it up. If I had debt, that $500 would be going against the debt. If my emergency fund was fully funded, I'd put the $500 somewhere else. Where? Well, I don't know. I'd look at my priorities. Now let's look at my retirement fund. Hey, wait a minute, look at that. I've got 10% of my gross going to my retirement fund. That's what I said I should do, isn't it? I'm doing it. That's good. But really, until I get my emergency fund funded, I ought to zero that out. And I should put that money up here. So this should be what, 11, I don't know, what was it? 60, something like that. I don't know. So that's really where I ought to go. It shouldn't be, oh, too high. Hold on. I think this should be 1106. I don't know. It should be different. But we'll go back to where we were. And this was 616 or something. But you see how the numbers change and everything updates? It is designed to work that way. Now rent. I don't know what your rent's going to cost. I know that rent can be more than this. I'm assuming you might have roommates. And that might help bring down the cost. And maybe you can find a place that's cheap, but I'm a little skeptical.Maybe you can. My daughter and her husband were renting a place in Glendale for around $1,600 a month. They recently moved though, and it was a 1-bedroom, around 800 square feet. So 1,200 is a little low. Again, I'm assuming with roommates you could make that work though, or a roommate. Insurance. Why do I have insurance? I'm going to get to that. That goes over here. But you should have insurance. I know it says homeowners. I'm thinking renters insurance is kind of the same thing. You should have some insurance. Property taxes, not until you buy a house. You don't have to worry about that yet. That's another one of the things that homeowners have to pay for. You don't as a renter. But it's also a deductible item. Home repairs. Well, you know, the landlord's supposed to take care of that stuff, but there are some things that you may have to fix. So I would encourage you to have some money set aside to get those things addressed. Furniture. You know, when I was at college, we furnished our apartment with stuff we found on the curb. It's really not the best way to do it. But if that's where you're at, you might want to start setting aside some money so you can buy some decent furniture in the future. That's what this is for. And again, it goes over here. I should talk about this maybe before I keep going down. This is what you pay every month. This is part of what we see over here, but it's all this stuff in italics. These are different accounts that I've created. They're my own. So I don't have different bank accounts. It's just one bank account. But this shows the breakdown of how the money is allocated by me. And these are expenses that maybe happen on an annual basis, or they happen on a basis that is not determined. So they're not monthly expenses, but they are expenses. Someday you will replace your car. This is to save money for that day. Someday you're going to buy some more clothes. Not every month, but sometimes you're going to have to go buy some new underwear. It wears out. You're going to want to go on a vacation. You're going to want to buy a gift. Christmas comes. Mother's Day is coming up, right? Pets. Someone mentioned cat food, pet care. And sometimes those pets have to go see the vet. So I find that fund goes up and down, and it's not a regular monthly expense. It varies. Computers. I hate computers. They wear out so fast. As soon as you buy them, it seems like they're useless. So you're going to need to replace a computer. So you're going to need to set aside money for that. Union dues. If you're working at a union shop, you will have to pay union dues. They've actually gone up a little bit. I've got 404 here. I think they're like 450 or something now. I'm not sure. If you live in LA County, you'll find you don't pay gas and your water and electric bill separate. They're all mixed together. You'll also find that your bill goes up and down dramatically depending upon the time of year. Our bills in the summer, which were much higher than they were in the winter because the air conditioning was running. So I found it didn't make sense to set aside a monthly amount because it varied so much. So I figured out the average, and I would just set aside money every month and then pay out of that account. That's why this is over here. Also, you pay every 2 months in LA, not every month. Another reason. So dentist, the doctor, I mean, these are all things that come up, but they don't come up every month. but they do come up periodically. That's why it's called lump sum payment planning. This is where I have a lump sum that I'm accumulating, and then as I spend money out of it, I indicate it here. And I keep this balance running, and when I go to the next month, I take the balance and I put it into the carryover for the next month's budget. And I continue to keep running it, and this gives me the total down here. So let's get back into the monthly funds. When we see one of these in italics, what that means is I'm putting that money right into my savings account where it goes into the lump sum payment planning. Everybody with me on that lump sum payment planning? It's one of the ways that you organize your money and set goals. You know, you could set up a line item here for that PlayStation 5. And you could allocate a certain amount of money. You know how much it costs, what, $500 or something? Put that number there. It'll automatically calculate the monthly amount. You can see that there's an equation. And then you start putting the money in to get there. And you establish how many months you want to use. If you don't want it to be 12, if you want it to be 2 years, that's a bit long, but you know. So this is really set up for an annual experience. But then you would just put that money in every month over here. And when you got to the amount of money you needed to buy the PlayStation, you buy the PlayStation. There you go. So back over to the monthly budget, which includes these lump sums. Again, things like your phone, though. This is your landline. Used to be around $40. Now mine's around 50. I'm ready to get rid of it. And of course, you're going to have a cell phone. You may have some sort of a satellite service. We do. Maybe you don't. I just have it there. It could be cable. Maybe you don't have any television service. Maybe that's money you'll put somewhere else. You are going to have some sort of internet service, though. And mine's actually less than 50 right now for the service I have. It's like 45. Groceries. This is very personal, and it's difficult for me to make an accurate estimate. I based this monthly guess on interviewing students, actually, because I have a family. And so what we spend on groceries is really different than what you guys spend as individuals. So I did base this on interviews with students. I asked people, how much a month? Tell me, I want to get a fairly accurate guess. So again, this might be different for you. And this is very flexible. You can move these numbers around to fit you. Holiday stuff. What's holiday stuff? Well, you know, when Christmas comes, you want to have some decorations on the tree. Well, you got to buy them, right? Well, $5 a month. You're setting some money aside for things like Christmas decorations, or you want to buy a heart to put on the door at Valentine's, or, you know, get a turkey for dinner, something like that. This is for those holiday related expenses. Restaurants. Who doesn't like to eat out once in a while? So you're going to do it. Budget for it. That's how much I'm setting aside for you to spend a month to eat out. Once you've spent $200, you stop eating out that month. You're done. Gasoline. Now, I found when I was traveling a long distance to work, this number was going up and going down because gas prices were as well. So I had to adjust this number on an almost monthly basis. Right now, I've got it $150. I really don't know. Gas is stupid expensive right now. It depends on how far you're going and how often you make the trip. So again, that's just an estimate, $150 I'm hoping will get you by for the month. Repairs and maintenance. You are going to have to get the oil changed. You're going to have to get your car with other major services. You're going to have tires, brakes flushed maybe at 40,000 miles, etc. You need to be setting money aside for that. And I also include the car registration here, which is an annual fee. And then insurance, you're going to have to insure that car. And again, that's an estimate. I don't know what your insurance is like. It would be different from mine as an old married man. But again, I think I based this on some inquiries I made with students for an annual cost. Car replacement. That's your car payment. But you're not making it to the bank. You're making it to yourself as you save up money to buy yourself a replacement for the car which you're driving. Clothing. Now this is adult clothing. That's because I got kids. I've got two funds, one for grown-ups and one for kids. Kids grow. You have to buy them new clothes more often. And the old people, hopefully we aren't growing too much. If we are, we're probably getting fatter because you do stop and you probably realize that you don't get any taller. But you're going to need to buy new clothes sometimes. So you set aside money for it. Dry cleaning. Some of those things need to be dry cleaned or need to go to the laundry. You can't do them, in your washer. Or maybe you don't have a washing machine where you're at and you have to actually go to the laundromat. Well, you have to set aside a budget for that, aren't you? Doctor and dentist copays. Set aside money for those things when they come up. The pharmacy. There's medicine that you might need to have on a regular basis. You're going to want to have a fund for the pharmacy. Personal care. Well, what's that mean? Well, it could be getting your hair done. That's probably what it is in our budget for when you go to the hairdresser or something. If you don't need this, you can either change it to another line item or you can zero it out and just put the money somewhere else. Subscriptions. I like magazines. I'm old. Okay. Dues. These are the union dues. That's part of the lump sum payment. So subscriptions, gifts, books. I like books. I buy books. I have a budget line item for buying books. I already talked about the computer replacement and the pet care. Guess what? You're going to want to have some money to stick in your pocket. Wendy and I give ourselves 20 bucks each. And that's what I gave you. 20 bucks to put in your pocket each week. Buy a cup of coffee. Get a cookie. I like having a cookie after lunch. You know, just those things that you might want to pick up when you're at the store, just to have some petty cash, so to speak. That's your pocket money. There it is. And then, and you can see these are categorized. Recreation, just general entertainment. You want to go play mini golf. You want to go to the movies. There it is. 100 bucks a month I got set aside for you. Vacation. You will want to take a vacation. Vacations cost money. Save money. Go on vacation. Now, let's go down here. See this number? It should equal 0. Does it? No. It says 354.46. What that means is I still have money I have not allocated. So I can go up here and I can say, where am I going to put that money? Well, what if you want to buy that PlayStation? I've got 354 bucks a month I could set aside for the PlayStation. I could create a lump sum planning line right here, and I could do that. I'm going to go and I'm going to just blow past it, though. I'm going to put it into my retirement fund, and I'm going to make a mistake. I'm going to put more money than I had. Whoops, look, it went negative. So if you've spent too much money, it will tell you that here as well. But yeah, ideally, you want to allocate all of the funds that come in every month. You want to make sure that you're managing your money. That should equal 0. And if it doesn't, well, then you've got some more money to work with. Maybe you could rent a nicer apartment and you could put it into your rent. Maybe you could get rid of the roommate. I don't know. But that's how this budget works. It's pretty simple. It works very well for our family. And this is where the emergency fund is. And usually you just put money in here till you get to a certain point, and then it just earns interest that you'll add to it every month, and then you'll carry this over to the next month. And I'll just go through and when I spend money, I'll put it in here that I've spent the money. So if I paid my rent, boom, I put it in there. If I bought groceries and I spent $289.63, oh, look, I've got money that can get carried over to the next month. Or I can reallocate it. I'll do that sometimes at the end of the month too. I'll kind of balance things and move them back and forth between each other. So you write in when you spend the money. And if you spend money over here, again, you write in that you spent some money. So let's say you bought a cheap chair at a yard sale for 35 bucks. See, everything updates. And at the end of the month, see, I'll actually label this like April 2021. I will then create a new one of these spreadsheets just by reusing this one for May. And I'll take the balance number here and I will place it into the carryover here. And it will then update. And I will check all of these numbers against my savings account to make sure that everything is correct. And I'll reset all of these numbers because you're going to get a new paycheck and we start over for that next month. And this spreadsheet I've given to Madison to share with all of you, probably on the Discord, however he chooses. Now, that's the sample budget. I'm going to stop there for a moment and just mention we are at the 8 o'clock point. I can go on. I've got a little bit. I thought about talking to you about pertaining to retirement. And there is another spreadsheet I gave to Madison that is useful for balancing your checkbook, which you really need to do every month. But it's up to you guys. If you want to stay, great. I know it's been 2 hours. I'm willing to, I don't think we'd go more than 20 minutes. What do you want to do, Madison?
Yeah, that sounds great. Sounds good to me.
And if you guys you're like, no, I'm done, that's enough. I don't mind if you leave. I'm not going to feel upset. Okay. But I'm going to pop back over to my PowerPoint again. It does say here to please balance your checkbook. And let me just show you the checkbook spreadsheet real quick. And then we'll come back to the, hold on. Then we'll come back to the discussion of investment for retirement. So this is my spreadsheet. It just makes balancing the checkbook really easy. What you do is you should write whatever the balance is indicated in your checkbook in here. The bank statement you receive will have a balance at the bottom of it. You should put in any outstanding deposits, any of the deposits that are in your checkbook but were not on the statement, you put them here, okay? And I'm just going to make something up. Okay, and I'm just going to make up a number. It's going to be wrong. I don't care. And then over here, you're going to put any checks that were not on the statement or any withdrawals. So I don't know. And I'm just making things up. And what should happen is the outstanding checks and the deposits should result in these two numbers matching. This should be 3,200. It's not. But that's because I made these numbers up. If it doesn't match, you either made a mathematical error or there's something wrong in your checkbook, and you want to just check that to make sure that you've got your checkbook correct and make sure the bank hasn't made a mistake. So you just want to make sure that everything adds up correctly. And this is a spreadsheet I also gave to Madison to share with you all. And it just makes balancing your checkbook that much easier. So I'm going to now pop back over to the slideshow. It really is important to balance your checkbook. Okay. Now I do see there's some people who are chatting, and I'm not seeing the chat right now. Life is a checkbook. You don't know what that means? Oh, okay. All right. No, that's a good question. What does balancing your checkbook mean? Okay. All right. Your checking account is probably where your money is, most of it, as it comes in. And again, with our family, I use the checking account as a clearing account. All of the money that comes into our family goes into the checking account, and then it gets placed either into the money market or into an investment account or into, or it gets paid out to pay bills. So the checking account is this clearing house where all the money comes in and goes out. It's very important to understand that that's how it's being used. It's how you keep track of everything. And you have a checkbook. Now, checks don't get used very much today. Most of our transactions are conducted online. I pay most of my bills online through my check, through my bank, or using debit cards. We actually withdraw cash, our family does. When some of those budget items that I listed for you, like groceries and gasoline, we would withdraw that amount of cash at the beginning of the month. And that's how much money you have to do with those things. And we would pay for gas and all of our groceries with cash. With the pandemic, we stopped using cash so much so as to interact less with people. So we did use the credit card as a charge card at the gas station in an effort to limit our contact. But we'll go back to using cash again as things get more safe. So the checkbook, though, even though you're not writing checks, you're still making withdrawals or you're paying bills. And you should write every one of those transactions into the checkbook. And you should be keeping a running tally of the amount of money in your checking account. So when a paycheck is deposited, and there's a good chance you're probably going to set up an automatic deposit. Most people do. It makes sense. And so the money will go into your, like, May 3rd. I know that the paychecks that Cal State Fullerton pay Wendy and I are going to show up in our account. They're already listed as, I can see them in my checking account as pending. So May 3rd, they'll go into the account. And our mortgage automatically gets paid out of the account on, well, tomorrow. And I've already got that written into the checkbook. So you write these amounts into the checkbook. Deposits go in one column. Anything that's taken out, any debits, deductions of any kind, payments, they're written on another column, and you keep a running tally. Now, I encourage you to, as good as you might feel like you are at math, use a calculator. We make mistakes. And I have found that just using a calculator helps to ensure you're not mucking it up. And I'm the one who balances the checkbook, so I know how frustrating it is when a mistake is made, because you have to change a bunch of stuff in the checkbook. So you keep that running tally. At the end of the month, the bank gives you a statement. You're getting it whether you know it or not. Now, it might be coming in the mail. And it might be a physical piece of paper that lists all of the transactions that you conducted that month, every single one of them. Every deposit, every deduction will be listed on that statement that has cleared through your checking account. At the bottom of the statement will be a total. That's how much money is in your checking account as of when they prepared that statement. There's a good chance that total is not the same as what's in your checkbook, because some of the transactions that you have documented in your checkbook may not have cleared through the bank yet. Again, you guys are too young to deal with PTAs, but the Parent-Teacher Association at the schools, they are notoriously slow to clear payments. We'll write them a check. It might be 2 months before they actually cash the check. Well, I wrote the check in the day I gave it to them, and I deducted that amount of money from the total. Well, the bank isn't going to deduct it until they actually cash the check. And even when you pay things online, some payments are almost automatic. They just move the money through and it's done in a day. Sometimes the bank actually creates an electronic check that they send to the person that you're paying, and it takes time for that to clear. That I would write that into my checkbook the moment I made the payment. So the balance in my checkbook is almost always different from the balance on the statement I received from the bank. Now, I mentioned paper statements. I prefer receiving that information digitally. So I have everything set up for electronic delivery through my bank. I just don't need all the paper. And I end up having to shred that stuff because it's got, you know, financial information about your family on it. You don't want it just laying about. So I receive all of my correspondence with the bank electronically. And I will download a spreadsheet from the bank of all of the transactions. And what I do is I open up the spreadsheet in Excel and I look at my checkbook and I find that transaction. And if I find it in my checkbook, I put a little check mark next to it in the checkbook and I highlight that transaction in yellow. And then I move to the next one and the next one. And I check to ensure that every transaction that the bank has cleared, I put a check mark next to it in my checkbook. And if there's any discrepancy in the amounts, this is where you want to find them. In case the bank or you made a mistake, you might have written the wrong number in. That'll muck up your math. So I check all of the transactions. And then I use that spreadsheet that I had just shown you. Let me make sure, I'm going to open it up again. I use that spreadsheet to balance the checkbook. Now, what the balancing references is the idea that you are taking the amount of money that the bank says is in your checkbook or in your checking account and the amount of money that your checkbook says is in your checkbook, and you're making sure that they're equal. That's what it means. So right now they're not equal. Why aren't they equal? Because there are some deposits that I've written into the checkbook that the bank didn't register when they sent me the statement. We're ending the month. The bank's going to prepare a statement for me, and I'll probably get it early next week. Well, I'm also receiving paychecks on Monday, and those paychecks are already written into the checkbook. So those paychecks are going to be over here. Because they're not on the bank's statement, they are outstanding deposits. And then there are bills I've paid that aren't going to be on that statement because the bank's going to prepare it probably today. And I literally paid a number of bills this afternoon, and I'll bet you they're not going to be on that statement. I did. I paid a number of bills as the month is transitioning. One thing I wrote in was the mortgage. The mortgage is going to come out of the account tomorrow. So it's not going to be on that statement. So the mortgage would have to be there as one of those deductions. So let's just, put a number in here for the mortgage. And then there's going to be, I go to church and I tithe every month. So I wrote the check this month for the tithe for the church. I sent that off to the church. I paid the gardener today. So I sent him a check. So all of these things are going to be here, whatever they are. I don't know, I'm just making numbers up here. And those are going to be outstanding debits or checks that are not on the statement that I received. And so the total of the deposit and the total of the outstanding checks are going to automatically tally here. And then there will be a subtraction where the checks are subtracted from the deposits. And that amount of money also takes into account the statement balance. So whatever it said, they say I have in the bank will be added to this as well. And this should equal the amount of money that I have written in my checkbook. And I just type that number in. And if it doesn't, oh boy, I better go back and look and see where the problem is. Did I miss something? Or is there a mathematical error? Does that help explain the idea of balancing your checkbook to everybody? I'm glad I explained that. I'm a little bit surprised you guys don't know what it is, but I think that this stuff just isn't being taught to young people these days. It is double checking to make sure that you have as much money in the bank as you think you do. What that line item tells you, Walter, is exactly how much money you actually have. That number is the amount of money that you have in your checkbook or in your checking account at that point in time. Does that help? Okay. Good. All right. Now, let's jump back in. And remember, I'm not a financial advisor. I just have your best interest in heart, and I want you to start saving for retirement yesterday. So we're going to talk a little bit about retirement investing and what the kind of general options are. Now, these are conservative options. These are typical options, and I like those kind because I'm not going to go become a day trader. I think that's a crazy thing to do. Some of my students have gone to play that game, and it is a game, and it's a scary game. You might as well go to Las Vegas and start gambling, because that's what you're doing. Where did the chat go? I lost it. I lost the chat. Oh, blast. I hate when this happens. I want to be able to see you guys are asking in the chat. So give me just a moment to find it. When I share screen, it always hides the chat at like the bottom of everything. And it's really aggravating. Oh my word, there it is. I literally had to close everything on my desktop. And I found it. So I'm going to just bring Zoom back up. Okay, there's Zoom. All right. So retirement saving. These two options right here are two of the primary retirement options that Americans have available to them today that are relatively safe. It's relatively safe and very consistent. They're available. Now, there is one option I don't have here that if you're in the union, you will have. You don't have a choice, you'll have it. It's called a pension. Pensions are the way retirement used to be. It used to be when you were employed, your employer, as part of your benefits package, provided what was called a pension. A pension was money that the employer set aside on your behalf. And you might contribute to that pension as well from your paycheck. I actually have a pension through my employment at Cal State University, Fullerton. I put money into this pension fund. You probably have heard about it in the news sometimes. It's called CalPERS. It's a state pension fund that is managed by a bunch of investors and take all the money that is taken from the different employees in the state of California and are contributed by their employers in the state of California, and they invest this money. And they want to see that investment grow so they can then pay these people their pensions, because a pension is a guaranteed fixed amount of money that you will receive until you die, that's based upon the number of years served and what your income was. And most of this country, people receive pensions until the 70s and 80s. Companies started to stop offering pensions because they're expensive. Instead, they created the 401k plan. Do you guys know what a 401k plan is? It is a 401k is a reference to like a code that describes the law that provides you the option to do this. So the 401k, and by the way, as an animation union member, you receive a pension. I just said that most Americans don't have them. And I did mention that I get one through Cal State. Pensions are still part of the packages often made available to employees of state and federal government positions. So that's one of the few places that pensions still exist. The Animation Union is another one of those few places where you do receive a pension. The pension that you will receive as having been a member of the Animation Union is good, but it's not enough to pay all your bills. So you need to also make other plans. I think when you're fully vested with a significant number of years, it'll hit maybe about 50% of what your income was. So the pension, and there's actually more than one pension that you get through the Animation Union, but the really good one is the one I'm talking about. The other one is just, it's a certain amount of money that you'll get. It's not a big chunk, but it'll help. It won't hurt. It'll be a supplement though, kind of like Social Security may prove. You'll receive Social Security benefits as well, but those Social Security benefits aren't going to be enough to pay your monthly bills in retirement. So those are part of your planning. And it's good to be aware of them and look at them and calculate them. And you can do that with tables provided by the union. Those tables will correspond with the number of years served in your salary. You'll be able to make a calculation as to how much money you would receive from the pension. And again, I think it's probably going to hit about 50% of your income when you get to retirement age. So not enough to live on, but not bad. They usually say figure about 70 or 80% of your income in retirement is what you'll need, because they're anticipating you not having the same kinds of costs. I think that's very conservative and maybe a little pessimistic. I think it's better to try to shoot for 100%. That's my take on it. So how do you make up the difference? Well, the union offers a 401k plan that you can take advantage of. And again, most of you don't know what that is. Well, the 401k is a way to save and invest money for retirement that helps to limit your tax liability. How does it do that? Well, with a 401k plan, you can identify a percentage of your income to be taken out of your gross paycheck. You could even just say 10%, like I recommended. You'll never see it. They will take a percentage of your gross income and they will invest that money on your behalf. And the Animation Union is contracted with, I'm trying to think who it is. They kept changing. I forget the company's name right now. One of those major investment companies to manage their retirement plan. So what they do is they give all the money to this company and they invest it predominantly into a variety of what are called mutual funds. And those people that the union has employed to do this will Their job is to manage the money and to see an increase and try to anticipate the best investments to get the best return on investment. And they balance risk. So some are more risky and some are less risky. The ones that are more risky have more of an opportunity to return more money, etc. And they'll balance it to ensure that there's always going to be a positive return. And so you have the option to have your money invested via the union's 401k plan. And I mentioned that money was taken out of your gross income, not your net. So before it's taxed. And then your money gets taxed, but your money does not get taxed on that initial gross amount. So if you had a $2,000 check and you said $200 are going to go into my 401k, the taxes are calculated based on the 1,800 remaining dollars. So you are paying less tax. A 401k is a deferred tax plan. Now, deferred doesn't mean you don't pay taxes, does it? It means that you pay it later. So wait a minute, when do you pay the taxes? Well, you didn't pay it when you earned the money. You pay the taxes when you collect the money. So when you retire and start collecting the invested money, and that becomes your income, you will pay income tax on that money. So how does that benefit you? You still pay taxes. Yes, but when you invested that $200, it was 200 whole dollars. If you invested the money after it was taxed, you would have already lost, that chunk that went to Uncle Sam. So in essence, you've got a larger clump that's being invested to have that compound interest work for you. And they also expect that you will collect back less money than you were making when you were working full time. So it's again betting on you not needing as much money in retirement. And they're thinking that you'll be in an income bracket that has less of a tax burden. And again, I don't like that bet, but that's what the 401k does. And it's not a bad plan. Now, one of the negatives of the union's 401k is that it does not include any matching funds. What are matching funds? Well, many companies set 401k plans up for their employees in place of pension plans. Guess which one's a better deal for the employee? The pension is, of course. 401ks really haven't paid off the way they're supposed to. Most people didn't invest in them like they ought to have done. Now, what these companies did, though, most companies did, they said, when you invest money into the 401k plan, we will match your investment up to a certain percentage. So they might say up to 2% of your income or up to 4% of your income. We will match your investment. Well, what that meant is if you took and said, okay, 4% of my paycheck's going to go in, they would give you immediately a 100% return on that investment by matching it. That's a no-brainer. If you're ever in a situation where the company you work for offers matching investment to your 401k, do it. It's a 100% return immediately on your investment. But after that, well, let's just talk about it. We're going to talk about Roth IRA in just a moment. Now, yeah, it was an incentive to get people to max, or at least to invest in their 401ks. The problem with the Animation's 401k plan is there is no matching. Why is there no matching? Because the Animation Union is in a position where they negotiate with all of the studios at one time. They can't get all of these different companies to be able to agree to this kind of matching scheme. It just isn't something that's logistically possible to do. So because the 401k plan is the union's 401k plan, it's not Disney's or Warner Brothers or Sony's or anybody else's, it's just the unions. They can't get all these studios to be able to be a part of that management. So it's just not a logistic possibility. So the Animation Union's 401k plan is fine, but there is no matching. And The other option that I think is worth considering for retirement is an IRA. What is an IRA? Well, IRA stands for Individual Retirement Account. The idea is it's an account in which you can invest your money with the expectation that you'll collect the money at retirement. And the Roth IRA is a specific type of IRA with a particular tax benefit. This is not a tax deferred account in the same way that a 401k is. You actually will invest your money after it's been taxed. So if you are making that $2,000, you're going to pay your taxes and have the $1,200. And then you're going to take $200 out of that and invest it. So it's a little different in how you do the money. So you don't have that tax savings. Well, why is this a good idea? Well, this is a good idea because when you invest this money, it accumulates over time, et cetera, et cetera. You get to retirement age, you begin to collect it. When you collect it, you don't pay any taxes now, because you paid the taxes on it before it was invested. So why might this be better than a 401k? Compound interest. You pay tax on the money, but it's not going to be near as much as the interest you earn over the years that it sat in that account. So in essence, you earned a tremendous amount of interest on that money that never gets taxed. That's the advantage of the Roth IRA. Which one's better for you? Well, that's really up to you. And again, you might want to meet with a financial advisor. I think the Roth IRA is a better deal than the Innovation 401k because there's no matching, and because of how the tax rolls out, and because I would want to anticipate matching my income, not a reduced income in retirement. So for those reasons, I think the Roth IRA might be a better strategy. I don't have a Roth IRA. Why not? There are limits to the amount of income that you can be earning to be able to open a Roth IRA. Wendy and I have always, as we've worked together, and they've increased these income limits, but our incomes have gone up too. We have always made too much money to open a Roth IRA. I know it's a terrible problem to have, terrible problem, but there it is. If I could, I would, but I can't, so I don't. We do have an investment account. I also have a 403B, which is kind of like a 401k, but for state employees. And we just have a regular IRA that we invest our money into, and we do have to pay tax on our returns on that. So we have investment accounts, but we don't have the Roth IRA. We do have the Animation 401k, and I have a 403B through the university as well. IRA is individual retirement account, actually. I think, Evan, I could be wrong, but that's my understanding what IRA stands for. The idea is you're setting that money aside for retirement. And usually those accounts are managed by, individual retirement account is what IRA stands for, are being managed by some sort of financial advisor. And when it comes to getting a financial advisor, the kind of the common or the smart advice is to go to a fee-only financial advisor. Why would you go to someone who charges a fee as opposed to the free one? Well, the free one's got to get paid somehow, and they're usually getting paid by the people whose investments they're trying to get you to put your money into. If you pay the person, then they're working for you. Now, my financial advisor is actually a part of the credit union where I keep my money. So, and I know her, we've worked with her for a number of years, and she's employed by the credit union, not by the people with which she invests the money. Wendy and I are part of Partners Federal Credit Union. It's the Disney Credit Union, and some of you may have the ability to open an account up. And once you get that account open, well, it's always going to be there. Even if you're not working at the studio, that account's open, you've got it. So we really like Partners. They hold our mortgage, they hold all our money, they manage our money. So we've had very good experience with Partners Federal Credit Union. There are other credit unions out there you can take advantage of as well. Okay, so this is my PowerPoint that I failed to maintain working with as I talk to you about these ideas. And what is this? Well, that's just a cow. I had drawn that cow the day I put this PowerPoint together and just dropped it in there because I liked it. I thought it was a funny cow. So that's my cow. Nothing to do with what we're talking about. And then for animation job titles and descriptions and where the money is, this link, animationguild.org/contracts-wages. I would definitely take a look at that sometime to get a sense for what people get paid and what you might be getting paid. And this, well, we are animators, so I put that in there because, well, we're animators, and that's it. That's the end of the PowerPoint. Any questions for me? I'll do my best to answer them. How do you check your credit score? Well, usually your bank or your credit card company will provide you with a type of credit score, and you are guaranteed, or you have the right to request your credit score. There's a federal law, and I think it's creditscore.gov or something. You can go there once a year. You can ask for your credit report and score. How can you make one? Again, I think credit scores are kind of a scam to try to get you to borrow money. I would advise you to not borrow money. You want to know about the website, the guild, the animation? I'll put the Animation Guild website into the chat. And Alexis, how do you negotiate? Well, it really helps to know what people are making. And that's one of the reasons why the union does the wage survey to help with the union employees, to share their wages, to help use that for negotiating purposes. And you can ask for money. I would have asked for more than they are paying you at DreamWorks. Always ask for more when you're moving to a new studio. How much more? Well, just, go up 10, 20%, see what they say. And maybe they'll just say yes. If they just said yes, you probably could have asked for even more. Remember that for next time. But if they aren't budgeting enough for that, they'll come back with a counter and see where they're at. When you guys are just getting started, and Alexis, you're not, you're already out there. But when you're just getting started, you're probably gonna have to take what they offer, and it's likely to be minimum. Now, there was a terrible scandal, and this is why I really, well, you're recording this, aren't you, Madison? Ed Catmull, he kind of spearheaded this wage fixing thing. It went on for like a decade, and it's awful, and it really did impact and hurt and compress wages in the animation industry. And you don't see as much variation in wages as a result of that. Now, you saw the wages aren't bad, but I can always cut parts out. Yeah, maybe. So that wage fixing scandal, there was a class action lawsuit. People are getting paid because of what happened, but I think we're still dealing with some of the impact of that on us. And I think that the more we share knowledge about what we're making, and that's what the animation union's wage survey is designed to do, the more that knowledge can be used by the creative artist employee to negotiate a better wage. The work we do is highly skilled. The studios make a tremendous amount of money from the product that we help to produce. I think we merit a competitive wage. So it helps to have that knowledge. And Alexis, what you're describing is why Ed Catmull created that deal. There was a lot of that going on in the 90s. When I was first hired by Disney, I was hired to a 5-year contract, personal service agreement. And those personal service agreements kind of went away when the scheme came in where the major studios all kind of agreed with each other not to do what you're describing, not to hire people away. But a competitive market is fundamental to capitalism, and it's fundamental to the employee being able to be competitive with the studios. And that's illegal. What was happening was illegal. And that's why there was that lawsuit. And it seems to me that Netflix is doing what they're doing. It sounds bad, but it's good. It's good for us. And that's interesting because I know they also stole Dawn Rivera. Well, I don't know if they stole her, but they hired Dawn from Disney, who was in charge of their HR. But then she moved, I think, she might be at Sony now, or Illumination, or whatever they call it.
Dawn the Illumination.
She's at Illumination.
Dawn Yamazi, I don't know. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, she's really a wonderful person, and she was at Disney for a very long time. But then she went to Netflix. I was surprised, and I wonder if it's what you're describing, Alexis. And but she wasn't there very long before she went to Illumination, and that's where I believe she is now. I like Dawn. And that is really nice to hear. So what you're hearing from Alexis is some good insight for all of you to get into the industry. But realize as you're getting started, you're probably not going to be in a real strong place to negotiate a high wage. That can change though, especially in an environment such as the one Alexis is talking about. But once you get yourself a little more established, then maybe you will be able to do that. And if you've got more than one studio trying to hire you, you might see if one of them is willing to pay more to have you, if you do find yourself in that position. So enjoy your Friday. I do hope you take to heart some of the things I shared about just looking at your life and looking at money and thinking about it differently, and kill the debt. Make the hard choices to live a life that maybe is a little less extravagant than the one you dreamed of. I think you'll find that you are more at peace, and money really isn't that big of a deal. Make good choices. Good. Crystal, credit's so bad. Someone heard Wendy. Is that you, Madison? Yeah, she's sneezing in the other room. You're welcome. And if you're in any of my senior level classes, you're going to hear it all again. Because this is a lecture I share with my special studies classes. And Madison did put those spreadsheets up, and you can make them your own. They're just something I put together. I'm no expert at Excel. So they're just something I cobbled together for my family and I share with you guys. All right. So I guess I'll wish everybody have a great weekend, and we're going to close out then, Madison.
Yeah, sounds great. Thank you so much, Chuck, for doing this and for sharing all this information. And as you mentioned to everyone here, I shared those links on the resources tab on the PMC Discord. So be sure to join that if you want those. They're there. Thank you, Chuck.
Porsches are cool.
Yes, they are. Yours looks really cool, for sure. All right.
See y'all.
Have a great weekend.
Bye.
Thank you.